Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Look at you guys in the chat. Tori and Andrew from Wizardly Reads are here. You guys are awesome. Always good to see you. And today I am joined by the fantastic Andrew D. Meredith, author of these lovely books. Over here, we have the Collation Cycle, we've got the Needle and Leaf series, and
Mhm.
most recently, a cozy fantasy called Quaint Creatures.
That's right here.
Oh, we've got Chris in the chat.
Hey,
Hello,
Chris.
and
Nita.
Anitha. Thank you so much for joining me today, Andrew.
Thank you for having me on, Kay.
Absolutely. So, can you give us a little? I know everyone in the chat probably knows you, but for those watching
All right.
later on or later in the stream, could you give us a little intro to yourself and a little bit about your books?
Yeah. I'm Andrew D. Meredith. I'm the author with the hat and the beard and lots of books. I've written 6 books now, Thrice and Foursquared, which you've got on your top there, are the first 2 books in the Needle and Leaf series. And that's a Slavic fantasy, a little bit smaller scope than a lot of large epic fantasies. Speaking of epic fantasies, I've got the Collation Saga, Deathless Beast, Bone Shroud, and Gloves of Eons, and soon to release Dread Knight. In this fall, we'll be doing a Kickstarter before that. Probably talk about that later. That's a big epic fantasy: paladins, mercenaries, dark figures trying to kill gods. The usual stuff. But that's my big epic fantasy. And then my new one is a cozy fantasy about a giant who's a veterinarian who used to be a dungeon inspector, and now he owns a magical pet shop in a fantastical city.
Can we talk about where the concept for Quaint Creatures and that
Yeah,
character came from? Because
yeah,
it's such a wacky, but I love it. It's a wacky
yeah.
concept, but I love it.
So I have long, not long, I mean, since I read Legends and Lattes, I thought about writing a cozy and had a few ideas that may still someday come to the light of day, but I didn't just want to just rip off Legends and Lattes because I wasn't trying to ride a hype train. And this past January, we were watching All Creatures Great and Small, the new one, which is a comfort show for us. Absolutely, I think it was for the new 4th season, which we still haven't finished it because we're afraid to finish it because then there's nothing else to watch for it. But it's so cozy, it's so comfy, and also so dynamic. And the people are great, and there's tragedy and comedy, you name it. And I said, well, what about a veterinarian in a magic city?
Mm,
And yeah, my wife said that would be kind of a cool idea. And I think that was like Saturday night. And then Sunday afternoon, I sat down and said, I'm just going to write a chapter. And that was January 21st. And February 21st, I finished it. So I just kept going. There was like
wow.
a little pause for like a weekend where Trisha and I just designed the world together. Did just
Okay.
spent time world building and figuring things out, and we had things that even beta readers such as yourself still
Yeah.
saw hung over, which were like a lot of the Welsh names that we had, and
Mm,
they were just too much. So we went simplified down to naming everything tars, like centaurs, minotaurs, pandatars. And so we simplified all the naming so that it'd be a lot more approachable, because there's always a time when an author has to say, am I trying too hard to be too smart?
right.
And I think we were. So yeah. So we and I forget why he was a giant. Oh, I know why he was a giant, because he was going to be a furbolg, and he
Oh,
is still
okay.
very furbolgy because he's not 20 feet tall. He's only 9 feet tall. But he
Right.
was going to be a furbolg, and then we had a debate with ourselves on whether was that, even though they're technically a real mythological creature from the far west, the east, the Central Europe, but was it going to be a D&D issue?
Okay.
So like a copyright issue with for D&D. So we kind
Right.
of removed a lot of the terms that we felt might be a little too touchy, and so he was a giant instead. So that's why he
Okay.
ended up being a giant.
So I have a follow-up question
Mm-hmm.
to his character because you also made him neutral.
Yes. Yeah.
How was it for you writing a character who's neutral, but you also need the reader to be invested in this
Right.
character?
Right. So he started as neutral because furbolgs are known for being
Okay.
neutral, and so I kind of ported that onto the fact that I have in this role all the giants are neutral. So I was playing with a lot of like the alignments that are in D&D. Um,
Right.
I feel like it helped the story because
Mm.
instead of admittedly, it can make him a slow character, not like
Right.
slow in how he moves, but everybody around him is so dynamic. He became a very strong straight man,
Mhm.
like a theatrical straight man, which I've written before. Jovan's kind of a straight man, and Jinnid might be argued to be a straight man, though he tends to be more dynamic than the others because he's more proactive. I mean, they're all proactive, but so it was a challenge for myself to how can I make sure that he didn't leave his alignment? How did I make sure he didn't do anything too good or too evil that would shift his alignment so that I could make jokes about alignment? Um,
Right.
and it just came from there. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And we've got quite the chat here with us. Pete, always good to see you. We've got Mindalin here, and I do love Chris's comment here as well. I mean, the collation cycle or saga sounds kind of cozy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Wizard and Nico both called it. Was cozy. Well, maybe not cozy, maybe comfy. And so I've kind of adopted that as it's definitely a comfy read. And so
Yeah.
it's not that far from cozy that I could make the jump. So it's not completely out of my wheelhouse that I wrote this.
Is it all the bread? Is that the
All the bread.
secret to cozy?
All the bread. Hmm.
Yeah.
I think the secret to cozy is ma, which is the Japanese term for moments of calmness. So, like in
Ah,
every Studio Ghibli movie, he actually um, um, Miyazaki talks about ma, and it's the moments of calm, the moment when you're looking out the train, it's just clouds and wind going through the plains, and the
mm,
moment having Totoro lying down
yeah.
and they're just lying there. That's ma. It's a moment of calmness, and I've always put those in my books without realizing that was the term for it. I called it
Okay.
moments of normalcy.
Okay.
But then I saw that there's actually you can watch whole videos on it on YouTube on what is ma. If you look up Miyazaki ma, you'll come. There's some very calm videos about that, and it helps create a good balance when you have massive tension and danger
Mm.
and moments of ma. It gives you just a good balance, and so I love trying to put ma into my books.
Would you say that that also helps bring out the humanity of the
Mhm.
characters, making them a little bit more relatable to the viewer or reader?
Yeah, and the realism of the world too.
Right.
Derek, what is Derek's last name? D Rock. Anyway,
Oh, Bailey.
Derek Bailey, he just did a review of Quaint Creatures this morning actually, and just talked about
Nice.
how there's a normalcy in the fact that the characters' lives are still happening, and so they can't just step away because they want to. Like
Right.
in a lot of adventures, that you still gotta go to your day job, and you still gotta have dinner when it's time to go to dinner,
Yeah.
and
Right.
you gotta eat, and you gotta rest if you're going too hard, and I think that goes along with the moments of normalcy, that having normal life must continue to
Mm.
go on, and making that a part of what I'm writing um, helps to uh, provide a foundation. Yeah.
But you also take those moments and you're not just adding the normalcy because there's still growth for those characters. They're still discussing the next day's events or something else might happen while they're having dinner.
Right.
I think you balance it in a such way where you do have that normalcy, but then yeah, you still have that adventure sneaking in or the reminders of it throughout those meals.
Yeah, it's where I've intentionally snuck world building in.
Right.
If I
Okay.
ever have a place that's info dumpy, I won't just cut it out. I'll say, could this whole thing take place over a campfire?
Right.
Well, not just whether it's a lore story, but if I can actually talk about world building over a campfire, I can then break it up with mundane action that isn't just there in a tavern again. I can still have
Right.
those, but
Mm.
having a campfire moment, or while you're walking along the street because you need to buy a fish for the barracks, having those conversations then and cutting it up with the introduction of a new, creature that's their pet, things like that, then let you info dump, and nobody realizes you info dumped until it's too late.
And you sneak that up on them
right.
there.
And then they're not mad at you because you didn't just dump on them.
Yeah. How dare you use your authorly tricks? Catch the readers unawares.
Yeah.
Speaking of authors, we also have Tim here. Welcome. And Anitha, where's your comment here? Anitha, I don't have to say it. You know I'm always glad to see you. It's always good to see you.
Always.
And Kaiju, welcome. So if anyone in the chat also has questions for Andrew, feel free to pop those in as well. And in the meantime, I would love to ask, because I'm going to pull a pop quiz on you here.
Okay.
There's a book that you always recommend, so much so that I've bought it.
Oh, yes.
If you recognize this one,
I do.
Writing Archetypal Characters. And so character arcs, I should say.
I spent an hour talking to a new author about that book today.
I don't doubt it. Somehow that does not surprise me. So out of the archetypal character arcs, I'm pronouncing that very wrong. Yes, I realize that. Is there one that you haven't explored yet that is just burning, you just want to dive into and explore with your own writing?
I haven't done a Crohn's arc.
Oh.
I would really, really like to do a villain arc, though. A good villain, like a book with a villain as the main character.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to explore there. Yeah, if I did, I could also see myself intentionally doing a populated story with good and evil, like you always do anyway, but flip it on its head, so the heroes are the antagonists in the story, but they're still, but their arc's still happening. That would be a great story to write.
Yeah. Would you do that in a new world or an existing world?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, see, you could get
I don't know which one I would
that.
use. I mean, there's a big story I'm still plotting that I won't be able to write for another 5 years probably. But when I do that, that's going to be a massive undertaking. Like, I'm going to write all 5 books at once because they have to be able to be read in both orders. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh my gosh.
But there will definitely be a ton of playing around with arcs because each one will also be a standalone. And so I can play with a bunch of different arcs. And so I'll get to explore over that very intentionally several arcs that I haven't normally gotten to explore.
You're just testing the boundaries of what you can do with writing.
I like to challenge myself whenever I can.
That's fantastic, though, because I feel like that's how you get the best out of your skills. It's going to be a crazy bumpy road, sure, but I feel like those are the most rewarding trips that you can take. So we probably can't ask more about that, but I will say with the villain one, I'd be really curious. Was there an aspect of a villain's journey in particular? Is it like an origin story you'd like to explore, or something on a different line in terms of what makes a villain? Or is it just a matter of getting that different perspective? So
to go into the full K.M. Whelan speech for villains, there's like a triangle you can draw of hero. We'll just take the hero's arc because it's easiest to do, of the hero, the bully, the coward. And if you're writing a hero story, you usually have a coward and a bully in the story along with the hero. And a hero has to ascend toward heroism by not being a bully or a coward. So learning from the two of them to not be either. And but they're shadows of the hero, in that the coward is the stationary failure, and the bully is the proactive failure of being a hero. But they're the same thing. In a villain's arc, you can start from either one of those two, and you either go towards a fall, which would be towards the hero, but where you fall from where you are, or you switch places towards the other shadow. So the coward who becomes a bully is one story. The coward that fails because he stays a coward, but he fails, is another story. And then the bully who becomes the coward is is a disenfranchising story where the bullies is victorious, they're winning, but what's the point? So it's a very nihilist story versus the coward is somebody who fights over his fear and becomes the villain. So that'd be more like almost like a Two-Face type story where he's trying to be a good lawyer, but he really is just a coward, and he becomes the Joker effectively. So I would love to come up with a really good disenfranchising story, because there's a version of that in every single one of the arcs of how do you take a queen's shadows and play with those, and how do you fail. The king's is like one of the easiest ones to do because it's the tyrant or the puppet, or the king. And what I love about that one is that in the end they all die. So the king to be a good hero, as a king you have to sacrifice yourself for the kingdom. Whether you end up dying or dying to self. Theoden is a great example of that. He dies for the kingdom. He wins. He's victorious because he died. That's actually his victory. Before that, he was a puppet. So he went from puppet to king, right?
Yeah.
Versus the tyrant is Saruman, or Denethor. Actually, is a better example of that. Denethor is an absolute tyrant, and the tyrant and the puppet in every story, they will always be assassinated because they failed to sacrifice themselves. The kingdom, because they failed to self-sacrifice, the kingdom will sacrifice them. And so Denethor dies as sacrifice for the kingdom. So he's still won, but it wasn't by choice. And so that's, and you could argue Saruman's a bit of a puppet to Sauron, but yeah.
So just an out of context line that needs to be put on a t-shirt for you is, in the end they all die. Where we need that on a shirt for you.
quote and Shakespeare, and then it's crossed out and says Andrew above it.
Yeah, exactly. Andrew Wizardly Reads is very excited for 5 years of releases from you. And Kaiju did have a question as well. Always curious for tips about writing dialogue, struggling with that.
I'm not a good person to ask that, because supposedly I write good dialogue, but I think it's because I sucked so bad 10 years ago at writing dialogue. I somewhere at some point internalized fixing it. I don't know how I did it. So that's why I can't brag nor know how I did it, because I guess I write good dialogue. I don't know how or why. So I'm not the right person to talk to about that. If anybody in the chat has other ideas on better dialogue, I can't even think off the top of my head what a good answer for that is.
Have there been any reading resources that you've used, or other resources that have had tips for dialogue?
Read out loud to yourself. I think that's the best thing you could possibly do. I will still get pings and knocks from my wife on my dialogue being too back and forth. And so I have to go through a couple times to make sure I'm adding in the he said, she says, or saying who they are, and varying it with action, and making sure that isn't just back and forth, and then a third person interjects, even though that's very realistic. But so that can be really tough. I would say read your dialogue out loud, as embarrassing as that can feel, and stick to your guns on how you want to convey who's talking. So if you're like, I will never say said, I need to use everything in the thesaurus, maybe don't. But also, if that's what you're going to do it. And don't, because one person commented, have one page where all they do is use saids, because it's going to throw your readers off. Because for the and the reason the argument for doing just saids is no one actually reads it. Is we internalize what we're reading in our heads. For those of us who have voices reading in our heads, some don't. But usually, like when I read it out loud as an audiobook narrator, I'll say something like, "So are you going to go over to the place?" He said. "Yeah, I'm going to go over to the place," she said. And I'll say it way low and understated, because I don't want it to be noticed. I want it to be internalized by the listener, except when I want them to. And that's when it might be so-and-so muttered. And then I mutter it along with it, or I try to, that's the difficult part in narrating, is breaking from voice into narrator. So it isn't. So you're going to go to the place, she said. and then the other person in their voice says that he said, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. But yeah, read out loud. I think that's the best thing you could possibly do, is read to yourself out
Brilliant.
loud. Don't whisper it. Read it out loud.
Out loud.
But every author should do one read out loud of their book at some point.
Okay.
It fixes a ton. It fixes a ton.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Tori also has a question. If you had to pick a genre that is outside your comfort zone and write a series, which genre would you pick?
Space opera, like
Ooh.
in space, yeah, some sci-fi probably.
Okay. All right. So you heard it here, folks. And after 5 years, we might get a space opera.
You might. Maybe before that. Who knows?
And of course, Andrew's question here is very important. What would it take to convince you to write a smut or romance?
A really good pen name to write under AI.
Okay. All right.
And I would never tell any of you.
I was going to say we can help you brainstorm.
You're not even going to know. The AI is going to write it all, and I'm still going to make $1 million.
Pete's got ideas here. You can chat with Pete.
That's coming out as a musical later this year.
Oh, brilliant!
With Joe Crystal.
So, in terms of creative burnout, that is something I think a lot of us struggle with. And you've got a lot of creative projects and go from writing to doing audiobook narration and your own YouTube channel and all of that jazz. So how do you balance it all in such a way that you manage creative burnout or hopefully prevent it?
Right. Sun Tzu said that the general with the better battle plan wins, and that every battle plan fails the moment it's put into effect. Every battle plan.
Yeah.
Because in the end it's about preparation. Basically it's the general who preps better will be victorious. And I do that. I will spend so many just days making a spreadsheet again by hand of me saying, if I was to start writing right now at a slower pace, what would that be? How many months can I write this book in? And then I put it to editing and blah, blah, blah. And I'll figure out what I can possibly do. And it never works. And I have to just redo it again later. But it gives me an idea of why I'm working towards something.
Right.
And I never take into consideration the failure of the fact that when I'm producing a book, I can't be writing.
Okay.
So like right now I'm editing books for the Kickstarter. So I'm not writing. I would like to be writing, but I'm not, because I just don't have the brain space for it, which is very depressing because I'm not writing. And when I'm writing, I'm not producing. And so that's a vicious cycle in and of itself. I can write multiple books at a time. By that, I mean, I can write a book, send it to alphas and forget it, which took several years to get used to. So I can just write this other book while it's off doing its thing.
Right.
Which is not easy to do, because I just want to obsess about any comments people are leaving for me and fix them as they come in. But I had to learn that does not help, because I need everybody's comments so I can do them all in one day and not have to figure out, well, that what's this comment? I don't see it here. Well, it's because I fixed it 3 months ago when I fixed somebody else's edits. So I really don't look at the book until you say, when you tell them the deadline is, and even then give them grace. But I can write when I'm writing, and when I'm in full writing mode, I can tend to do a couple projects at a time.
Right.
But you also have to be at a point where you say it's okay not to write a story right now.
Yeah.
So
have you run into a position where you say, I have this story idea, but I'm not in the place or I'm ready to write it yet, and you've had to put it off for that reason?
Yeah. That one book I want to work on in 5 years. I can't touch it as much as I would like to just do nothing but work on it. Speaking of Derek.
There we go. Were your ears burning, Derek?
That I can't work on it because I have too much other things to do. I need to get things done with finishing off Needle and Leaf, and I'd like to write a couple more cozies, and I need to get done with the Collation Saga through book 8, which requires a break to write 4 other books. But I need to have those done so that I can see the career trajectory paying for itself, so I can take the time to write 5 200,000 word novels at once without them ever being published, which is going to be it's going to be like a Janie Wirtz endeavor, because I need it to be, it cannot work unless I can't, and I have to outline the whole thing before I even start it, because it requires too much timey-wimey stuff that I got to play with to make it work correctly.
Wow.
So that's daunting.
Definitely, yeah. Because that's probably in the back of your mind as you're working on everything else, and it's kind of sitting there and you're like, just push it back. In the meantime, while you have all these plans and projects, and it sounds like you have a great handle on your time management as well. When it comes to all of that and you get these new ideas, are you continuously trying to fit them into that big plan with your opus magnum and the books you already have planned, or are you kind of, any extra ideas you're kind of just putting off to the side?
I put them off to the side.
Okay.
My Scrivener is full of unfinished documents that are started, and I have like, and like there's one story I had 30,000 words I wrote back before Thrice was ever even out. I have 30,000, but the more I look at it, it's like, actually that probably needs 2 more POVs, so it's a full book, and it might fit into the Magnus Opum story, so maybe it'll get be cannibalized into that one. So it's like, kind of done the work. That's kind of cool. So, but that's why I tear my hair out when someone says they threw a book away. I just deleted it. Like, oh my word,
there was something you could have used there.
Don't do that. I don't think it's good for anybody's ego to do that. Honestly, to do that is such a self insult, to say what I wrote was such trash, I never want to look at it again. And it's like, I have things I'm never going to look at again. They're down at the very bottom of my folder with XX, so that sits down there at the bottom of the alphabet, name, and it sits there, and it might be just an old version of a Collation saga or whatever, but it's like, it's still there. So if I was ever going to go, what was that one scene I wrote? I could use that right here. Where was that? I can go find it, discover it was garbage. Yeah, true. But it's exactly how I remembered it. So, okay, now I can repurpose it and feel like I've done that. So trunk the novels, don't burn them. Because, I mean, I couldn't imagine if my house burned down and I lost my iPad. So I try to keep up on making sure everything's uploaded to the cloud. But if I was to lose even a month of work, would be devastating. So why get in the practice of throwing things away anyway? Plus I'm a pack rat, but no.
Well, there is a difference though, and it's a good point, but it's not like, we're in an age of computers and data like being stored in the cloud and everything. It's not like you're hoarding stacks of paper that are completely unorganized or just sitting around, waiting to catch fire. Though, we don't live in those day and ages anymore. Some authors might, where they write, I have seen, on paper and pen, but I wouldn't say it like takes up their rooms or libraries the way it used to. Thank goodness for tech in that case.
And think of your kids too. I mean, your kid's going to be 15 someday, and you've got a story that you're a published author at that point, and you've got a garbage novel you never finished that was absolute fanfic that you wrote when you were a kid. You could have thrown it away when you were younger. Or you can show it to them and say, this is okay to do. You need to get this out of your system. Write some fanfic. I did it too, and look where I am now. So you can provide that kind of hope to the next generation, even if they're not a writer. They could be something else, but just to have seen that mom or dad did something when they were younger and didn't give up then is going to benefit the next generation.
I love it. That's a beautiful way of looking at it too. And in terms of coming back to the cozy stories, I want to dip back into those. We were talking about Studio Ghibli. I gotta ask, which one's your favorite?
That's tough because I've only seen a few.
Okay.
But when I was dating my wife, we watched Castle in the Sky, and I haven't watched it again since then. But it sits here as I must see it again, but I haven't sprung for buying it. And it's never on streaming. And I really, really want to watch it because I watched it, and Steam Boy at the same time, which was
Okay.
by the same. I forget who did that. I hated Steam Boy so much because it was like it's going to be steampunk, and there's like 2 steampunk items in the whole thing. And I was just I was so miffed at it because Castle in the Sky spoiled me so badly, and
Right.
as a semi pseudo steampunk story. So I really want to go back and watch that a lot.
Okay.
I've watched 1 or 2 I didn't appreciate, I didn't like. I forget. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Now, if we want to, okay, my favorite Studio Ghibli movie is the Bakshi Return of the King cartoon, which counts as a
Oh,
Studio Ghibli because Studio
okay.
Ghibli was contracted to do the Gollum animations. So I'm calling it so you can say it's a Studio Ghibli movie.
Can you say the title on that one again?
Yeah, it's the Ralph Bakshi Return of the King.
Okay.
And anybody who's seen it right now is probably already waiting for me to say right now, where there's a whip, whoosh, there's a way, and now it's going to be stuck in their head for the next 3 days.
I have not seen it, but yeah, that's gonna be
Yes.
stuck in my head.
Yep. So Ralph Bakshi did The Hobbit, which is also amazing
Okay.
if you're a little
Yes.
kid, and it's nostalgia for me. It's got some great music. And then they did not do The Fellowship of the Ring. It was done by another studio that did a really weird over animation that has it's weird. I've never actually seen it.
Okay.
But they only did 2 movies, and basically they failed it so bad that they went back to Bakshi and said, will you please come back and do the rest? And so he did Return of the King and did it in a way that if it's the only one you watch, you understand all of Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh,
All of the Lord of the Rings,
okay.
because it kind of starts at the end and then goes in and then finishes the story, and it feels like a complete story in a really good
Interesting.
way. So, you're going to be mad at me for making you watch it, unless it just happens to hit just right, and you'll be like,
Mm,
there's actual shots for shots from all 3 of those cartoons that Peter Jackson used.
really?
When Proudfoot at the at the uh, at the celebration of Bilbo's life has his feet up on the table, it's the exact same shot in the Fellowship of the Ring before he leaves. So yeah, they're pretty weird. I think you can watch them on YouTube, but
Okay.
yeah,
I'm gonna have to look this up. And I don't know about anyone else, but I know I need a movie of just the hobbits, not going on adventures, just living
yep.
their cozy life. And I think there's a video game coming out.
Tales of the Shire.
Yes, I
They just
am.
started showing footage for it. It looks good.
It does. I saw a
Yes,
trailer for it today. It looks awesome. I
yes.
sent my husband a message. I was like, I demand this. I don't
Mm-hmm.
play many video games, but I
No,
demand it.
yes.
So in terms of the hobbits then, what keeps them so cozy? What makes their lifestyle so cozy and desirable to many of us just wishing we had a hobbit hole?
um,
It's the food, isn't it?
it's the food, and but not just the food. They also have a great appreciation for good ale
Yes.
and uh, smoking pipeweed. Yeah, and the
Okay.
vests. No matter
Oh,
how
of
far they
course.
go, they never lose their vests. Well, Bilbo did, but the other 4 didn't. They made it through the whole. They made it to Mordor and back, and their vests are intact. So they've obviously got a great economy. They're making really
Right.
high quality clothes, and I think the older you get, I mean, there's such a grandparentness to the whole thing. Like if you're a
Mm.
kid, the hobbits are the quintessential what you imagine going to your grandparents.
Yeah,
That
that's
feel
true.
right. And then as you get older, you're like, but I could have that. You're like, yeah, you can. That's
Yeah.
why they had
Mm.
shag carpets.
I think part of the nostalgia too with at least, like, in terms of going to the grandparents and seeing that in the Hobbits,
Yeah.
the kids are always involved in what the adults are doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Grandparents are so much better at that, I find, than parents, where they're like, "Yeah, just do what I do." And then, like, I get my kid back from grandparents, and they're like, "Yeah, he just did whatever we were doing."
Mm-hmm.
And I look at them baffled because I try that. He has no interest.
Yeah.
So, well, the kids in the Hob and the Shire, they look like they've got a pretty good deal
Yeah,
going on.
we were noticing that the other day that like we spend our time as parents saying, "Come on, let's go. Come on, let's go. Get in the car.
Yeah.
Let's go. Come on, let's go."
Gonna be late. Let's go.
And we're gonna
Get
be
those
late.
shoes on.
And then the grandparents don't do that
Yeah.
because, oh, we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
I brought snacks. There's an episode of Bluey that's about Bingo
Yeah.
being rushed, and mom just has to realize that Bingo's fine. I'm gonna be fine. It's okay to take a breath. If we're a little
Yeah.
late, we're a little late. Because everybody's dealing with the same kids making them late.
Yeah.
And it's okay to apologize and say, "Hey, sorry I'm late. It took a little longer to get out of the house.
Yep.
It's just a park visit."
Yeah. Not like we're meeting for a reservation
That's
at 6 at a
that's
fancy
right.
restaurant, right? Yeah. It's I think something else too is it's okay to make a mess,
Mm-hmm.
right? As I don't know if anyone else is like this, but I was raised with you. Everything has to be clean. When you're baking and cooking, you always clean up after yourself. But my grandmother was the complete opposite. There was
Mm-hmm.
flour everywhere, butter, all over things, and she was like, "It's fine,
Yeah.
we'll clean it up later." And I've tried baking with my 3-year-old. Those the toddlers' hands and, like, babies' hands are the fastest things that exist,
Yep.
and once they clamp shut with something, there is no prying whatever they've got in their little hands out unless they wanna eat it.
Yep.
It's amazing to me, but yeah, learning not to
Yeah.
stress when all of a sudden, a little tiny hand, like, spills a bowl or
Right.
reaches and grabs something or flicks flour all over
Mm-hmm.
the place,
Yeah.
that is a skill I am working on, but I
Yeah.
feel like watching like, I'll put on, Howl's Moving Castle, I'll put
Yeah.
on Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, I'll put them on in the background, even the music
Yeah.
is just calming. It's
Yeah.
just so nice to have in the background while
It's
this toddler is, going crazy in
yeah.
the kitchen.
It doesn't slow down for a while either. We
Lovely.
this year started teaching the kids how to cook and doing like
Yeah.
very serious. You will cut your finger off knife talks and
Yeah.
just putting a bit of tool fear into them because that's important.
Mm.
Like I
Yeah.
I can saw. I hate saws because
Yeah.
I never cut myself on a saw. I've had friends who have done it when I'm not there. I'm glad I wasn't there. So I have a very
Mhm.
healthy fear of saws. And
Yeah.
so it's important to have healthy fear of a knife and that sort of thing. So we started with omelets, which I could normally whip together for the four of us in half an hour.
Mhm.
And I think we got the first omelet done after an hour and a half
Okay.
because it was
Wow.
taking time how to cut a tomato, which is harder than cutting this, and how to keep your station clean enough so that you can, dump it later, but how do you keep it so that your board is clear? And that was really fun, but it did take an hour and a half to make one omelet and then
Yeah.
a couple more. But it was good because then
Yeah.
we all have a more healthy respect around the kitchen of Sharp coming through, and so we
Yes.
can, because we have a galley style kitchen, and we can move around each other safely because of that. Um,
Right.
and they're a lot older than yours is.
Yeah. Yeah,
You'll get there.
I mean, yeah, he'll get there, and I know what, like, right now, what I do with him is I bake bread, or I'll
Yeah.
bake cakes and stuff like that. Because happy birthday cake, yeah, we want
Mm,
happy birthday
yeah.
cake,
Or an
but
unbirthday cake any day. It's fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, an
Yeah.
unbirthday cake. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to get him watching Alice in Wonderland,
Yeah.
maybe when he's a little older, because
Yeah.
a lot of the
It'd be
feedback
kind of
I've
crazy.
heard from people my own age were it was scary.
Yeah.
I couldn't watch it. Meanwhile, I was the kid who was like, no, I want more." I
Yeah.
loved Alice in Wonderland. I love the concept of making fun of the normalcy
Hmm.
in life, right?
Hmm.
Where there's order, there's madness.
Just taking time to have tea all day.
Yeah, nonsensical tea with
That's right.
holes in the bottom of cup or being, like, cut in
Yes.
half, yeah.
Yep.
But what I try and do for him is, things like cakes, it's a little harder, but at least for bread, I can
Mhm.
make him his own little tiny loaf
Right.
in addition to the main loaf so that he can, like, walk around and go, my bread,"
Mhm.
right?
Or just getting to turn on the if you do it in a turning on the blender, turning on the
Yes.
yeah, getting to turn that on and watch it spin. That's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's entertaining enough. Although I think he's a bit bored with the blender at this point because we make smoothies, right? He's just like
Yeah. Yeah.
at this point, I'm like, "Something loud's going on," and he's like, "Okay." Cool. Keep playing. So let's come back to your writing a little bit, and what makes things cozy, and all the good stuff. So
Yeah.
in terms of your Kickstarter, I want to make sure we get that in.
Yeah.
What can you share at this point?
So Dread Knight is done / with the editor right now, my wife.
Nice.
But I like to have. That's why I don't quite have a date yet. It's probably going to be. I would love to do middle of July, but probably August is what we're looking at, because I
Okay.
like to make sure I have the right number of ducks in a row, so that when I make a promise and say that, oh, by the way, I'm going to have this to you by October 1st, it's because it's already got all the balls rolling. But there's been life changes that have just slowed that down a little bit. So it's going to be for Dread Knight, and through that, hardcovers for all 4 collation books, with new matching covers that will be all completely shelf, still the same size as the old ones, so they'll still stand up against the other ones size wise. I'm not gonna pull a dandelion and give you an inch short book.
Thank you.
No problem. I got you back there. But there will be an option to buy all 4 books in hardback, audiobooks, because I release my audiobooks at the same time. The hardcovers will have naked covers underneath the dust covers, and I'll probably have a few other little doodads. I'm hoping to have like some nice bookmarks and stickers, and I will do it. I'm hoping, if we go high enough, to do at least one pin. I have big plans for pins. I'd like to do some really nice fancy pins, but that might be a totally separate Kickstarter that I'll do a special edition pin set for Kalatai.
Very nice. Yeah. Anitha needs to know about shipping.
Yes.
There you go, Anitha.
I have to do some calculations, but I know friends like Zach Diamante. He was able to do worldwide. So I will do the best that I can to ensure that it is equal to that. So Canada and England is kind of a given. I don't know how much the shipping is going to be exactly, but
just a friendly Canadian tip to Anitha: make sure that you're calculating for potential customs or duty fees as well. They may not happen, but when they do, they are randomly priced, as I've learned, because no 2 customs individuals can agree on the same price, apparently. I've had that happen. Okay. So, yeah, wallet ready. And yeah, same. Wallet is ready and in pain. So if you could do, and this doesn't have to be what you plan to do, but if you could do anything for a Kickstarter, what's like the golden level that you want to reach someday?
A war game.
Oh, a game.
A war game, yeah.
A war game. Okay.
So that's not just a hope too. It will be happening. Okay. I was a game designer for a board game company for a few years, and I've been for the last 10 years doing game design on the side with a friend off and on, and we're currently working on something else, which I'm hoping is going to fold into a collation war game. That's one of the primary reasons, Pete, that now that I've done collation 4, I'm not going to write collation 5 until I stop and go back 70 years and write the Protectorate Wars, because that's when it'll take place, and it'll be paladins and you name it doing a medium-sized war game. So it will not be Warhammer size. It'll be above skirmish is the hope, for gamers out there that know what that means. So it'll be it's going to be great, and maybe that will also spin off to a whole bunch of novellas that take place during the war. So I have so many plans, but I want a war game really badly, and I have other board games. Like, I had a board game I almost sold to a really big company that I would like to go back and visit, and I might turn it into a Euro game set at Parian Tour, the Fortress Monastery of the Paladins, because it was a monastery game anyway, so I might shift it to in game for a game. So I've got plenty of game ideas, and let's keep going on this. I do plan on turning a lot of the board games that you see in the books into board games as well. So a lot of the tavern games they play as small tavern game style games. That's it's always on my mind. Always on my mind.
Love it.
I haven't put a game into Sideways yet, so I'll just have to do that pretty soon.
Okay, we're gonna have to keep tabs on that.
I gotta have, but that's what cookbooks are for, though, right?
Yeah. Well, we have Micah popping in the chat here as well with a weakness for fantasy hardcover Kickstarter editions and a weakness for board game Kickstarters.
Nice.
So dangerous combination.
Yep.
All the links.
Like to live dangerously.
All the links to follow Andrew's updates and everything are in the description if you need that. Tori, yeah. So I have a question then for you.
Yep.
Because I enjoy board games, but the more complicated they get, the more my brain just goes silent.
Sure. Yep.
So, and my husband is not much of a board game player, but he does try. He puts up with my attempts. I will say that. So, do you have a recommendation for an easy to step into game for like 2 people?
Yes, for you specifically. First one I'm going to say is Tokaido.
Tokaido. Yes, I have that one.
You've played it? Okay, good.
I have.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I have.
Because it just plays itself. It's such a zen game.
Yeah.
It's so zen. But Tokaido is a great entry.
Yes. Yeah. I will agree to that. Yes. And I'm just going to put how my brain works there. Yeah. I still needed my friend to guide me on how to play that one.
Yeah. But it's one of those games where who cares if you win?
Yeah. That was so nice about it. My husband did rage at that, though, because he's very competitive when it comes to games.
Yeah. There was another one I was thinking of. He's super competitive. And you're not.
So he's a competitive guy when it comes to games and even sports. Like he used to play sports and stuff. I don't mind being a little competitive.
Sure.
But I'm not gonna like stress about it. Right. I'm playing a game to have fun. Yeah. What weird combination.
Okay, Kay, do you like racing at all? Like car racing, or is that like
Okay. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Like you like car racing. Okay.
Yeah.
Look at the game Heat.
Okay.
Your husband's he's gonna devour that game.
Nice.
It comes with 4 tracks. You can do like Paris, Italy, England, or USA, and it's like an Indianapolis 500 style board game. It's not that intense, but it is. Okay. And basically, you set the gears of your car for how many cards you're going to play, and you're trying to gauge how you can take a curve that's coming up, and whether you can land behind somebody and drift them and pass them. And it's one of the best simulator games I've ever played. Like it feels like you play it and go, I was actually racing a car, versus something that sort of is like racing or sort of is this. It's like, no, you're racing a car. And especially if your son is into,
he loves cars.
They're gonna have to do cars, cars like with Disney. But check out Heat. I forget what the subtitle is, but I'll send it to you. I think you might enjoy that one. And if you have friends over, you'd be like, oh, here's play the game. It kind of plays itself. Yes. Let's just go. And by the time you finish the first circuit, they're gonna be just like ready to go. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you. We have John in the chat as well. Welcome, John. Yeah. And Tori has a burning question. Will there be a chance of merch with the different Paladin orders?
I'd like that. I'll have to think about how I would do that. It'd be kind of hard to find somebody who can make me hammers to sell.
Here, I was thinking t-shirts.
Yeah. Pins would be easy. Shirts, we're already kind of looking at some cups and stuff that we need to do. We've been playing out designs. So there will probably be some stuff pretty soon. Especially with book 4 coming out, I've now got enough orders that I can make some fun stuff. So yeah, that could happen.
Nice. And let's see. I'm just going to catch up on the chat here. Tori again has another burning question. Which character in Collation would you say is the one that you think is your best character writing?
Katya, probably, because she's the one that requires me to do the most work, because I don't have anybody that she's based on in my life. So I really had to work to figure out who she was, and so she required a lot. She requires a lot more intentional finesse. It takes me a lot longer to write her sections, but because it takes so long, they tend to come out a lot cleaner without requiring a reader to tell me that I need to slow down or actually explain something, because just because Janet understands it doesn't mean that everybody else does. And Katiam requires I'm much more intentional, because I really don't want to fail that that storyline book by book, because she represents a whole lot of what I'm trying to do, with some subplots that I just try to be very cautious of that. And so she's she's the hardest and the hardest to write, and the best when she comes out.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And Pete, I honestly, as soon as someone starts explaining the rules, my brain goes quiet. Like it's in one ear and out the other, and I'm just staring at the board. I think I'm more the type of person where I'd rather learn as I play. So give me like the bare minimum that I need to know in order to like set up my cards or whatever, and then let's just dive in and do a quick like playthrough, run through of the game, and then like a mock game, and then learn from there. But as soon as someone breaks out the rule book and then drones on for 20 pages, that's where I'm like, oh, okay, now an hour's gone by and I'm done.
My tea's gone.
The snacks are gone, so what's the point in playing now? You know? But yeah, it kind of just goes quiet. Goes elsewhere. Ooh, other recommendations. Look at that, Forbidden
Beer and
Island.
Bread is a 2-player game that she mentioned there too.
Oh,
That's
and here I was just thinking the generic Beer and Bread.
No, it's a game where you are harvesting grain to either make beer or bread.
Okay, well, you just said the magic words there. That's like Stardew Valley, but with bread. More bread. Onitama.
Onitama is great. Yeah, it's a 2-player game that's plays very easy, very fast.
Nice.
Or very slow if you know what you're doing. Then it becomes a much slower game. But it's a good game. My son and I break that out in the morning sometimes.
Nice. I'm gonna have to look into those. See, it's hard to get like I have a friend who plays board games, but she plays like the games that will last 3 to 4 hours or sometimes days. And with a toddler, there's like we're lucky if we have a half hour of energy after he goes to bed. So a quick snappy game that we can play is really, really beneficial.
Yep.
Pete has a great question here. What about a Paladin Order quiz a la Facebook and BuzzFeed?
I have to design it well enough that not everybody automatically becomes a windrunner.
I love that you know your audience that well.
Because I swear, I don't know how I know maybe 5 people who aren't windrunners. Everybody's a windrunner or a whatever what's her name is, the slider girl.
Okay.
And it's like, is it really that many windrunners, or is that just because it's the most popular and that's how the test was built? I don't know. This is my Ravenclaw is talking, but yeah, everybody's either an edge dancer or a windrunner.
There you go. Hello, Timothy. Good to see you. Welcome. And okay, so Derek is curious now to know what your favorite genre of board game is.
Euro games. Uwe Rosenberg is my favorite designer. That doesn't mean I like all of his games, but I will, if it's a Uwe Rosenberg game I have not tried, I will try it if it's offered. Like Agricola is his most famous game. And that I forced Trisha to play 3 times when it first came out. She hated it with a passion, like a burning sun. And now it's our favorite game, enough that we'll be happy to pull out Agricola. But he has plenty of other games that are really great. So I love a good Euro that's thematic. If it's not thematic, if it's too mathy and it's just math, I'm like, bore me to death. But if it's got a great theme, then I don't care if I lose, because I can just play my theme, make my farm, raise some sheep, and be happy. So
yeah, see, this is why I play Stardew Valley, because I used to play other games like more, Witcher. I tried Hogwarts, and the problem I ran into is now that I'm a parent, I can't just drop a game and come back a month later and play it, because you completely forget everything that you've played.
Yeah.
And so Stardew Valley for me is kind of doesn't matter what I do in that game. Doesn't matter what pace I do it at. I can forget about something for a year and then go, oh, hey, I was supposed to do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
There's no consequences. And yeah, I'd say I'm more a hands-on learner. I mean, I've watched the odd YouTube tutorial,
Hmm.
just like 10, 15 minutes just to get the basics and then move on. But yeah, hands-on for me. So as we close in at the 1 hour mark, I do want to ask, what can readers expect from you upcoming next?
Kickstarter end of the summer.
Brilliant.
Um, I would like to get at least one more done before the end of the year. We'll see.
Sorry,
I'm about
which one was that?
halfway for more cozies. I have
More fuzzies.
cozy. I'm halfway through.
Okay.
Um, I like to finish that one, and I like to write a third one.
Mm,
The one I'm working on right now is a food truck story
okay.
revolving around a food truck that makes pies, starring two characters from the last book. And then the third one's going to be a story of a particular character in the book who opens a theme park out of a dungeon.
Mm,
Yep, if you know, you know.
yep. Yep.
I'd like to get both of those done by the end of the year, and I really have to get the third Needle and Leaf done by the end of the year. So it'll probably end up being food truck, fife and drum, which is Needle and Leaf 3, and then I'll work on the third cozy. So that's what you're looking at through the end of this year.
Okay. I'm looking forward to all of those, but in particular, I'm so excited for the third needle and leaf
Yeah,
one.
me
I
too.
feel like I've been waiting a while for that, but even though it hasn't been that long, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just the suspense. I need to
That
know.
that is 1/3 written, so it's happening. So it's not like I
Okay.
gotta kind of
Okay.
figure it out. It's like, no, I know it's happening. That's why I ended
Yeah.
up having to split it into 2 more books, into 4 books total. Is because
Okay.
I couldn't do it justice to finish the book in even an extended third book.
Mm,
It needs 4 books to finish the story to get the full effect.
right.
So yeah,
All right. I'm excited.
thank you.
Anitha says, food truck, I can give you some of my recipes.
Awesome. I'm gonna talk to you.
So, Anitha, can you share those with me too? I like
Mhm.
recipes. And yes, we might just have to reread the first two before the third one comes out. So yeah, that's quite a lineup. Agreed, Derek. So if all of you have a final question for Andrew here, feel free to pop them in. In the meantime, something you are really well known for, I think, in the community as well, is just being your super awesome self and offering help to others who ask for it, whether it's in terms of author related things or anything else if they're looking for a resource. So, if anyone were looking to start writing, what would you say are your top three go to resources or pieces of advice to help them get started?
Okay, and Wyland's archetypal character
Yeah,
arcs,
we're just going to put that on the screen there.
which don't read if that kind of thing overwhelms you.
Mm,
Like I know some people that overwhelms them and so they won't read it, and other
right.
people that's the first thing they need. To add to that, treat the tools that you get together for how you write as tools in a toolbox, not as laws.
Mm,
So, like Cam Wyland's book might be your number one favorite tool, but we've all have toolboxes at home. Doesn't matter who we are, and there's always one tool we use for everything. It's
mm,
that one screwdriver we used to use as a pry bar, as a screwdriver, as 100 different things that aren't supposed to be used for. But we own lots of tools so that we know they're there. That does
hmm
not mean because you have tools you must use them for everything. That's not true. So acquire your tools, but don't live by them.
Right.
And take your time to figure out who you are as a writer,
Mm,
rather than say, I got to write my book. I'm going to start writing my book right now. It's like, that's cool. Can you stop for just 3 months? I know that seems like a long time. It's really not. To say, okay, I'm going to spend 3 months figuring out what's my pay and write some short stories, a novella, something shorter so I can figure out how I write before you even
mm,
write your big one, or you're going to be figuring out so much. It's honestly, it's like parenting, right? You can prepare all
yeah.
you want. You're never ready. You are
No.
going to still have to learn a lot on the job. but
Mhm.
you also can learn a lot ahead of time. But don't
Right.
just automatically just go, I'll just write a book. What's the worst that can happen? I said, well, there's a lot that can happen.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Now you're in it. Now you got to write it. So do it. But if you can just take your time to jump
Mhm.
in, and you will be happier in the long run.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
If you are the type of person who just needs to dive in and figure it out, don't be afraid to stop at whatever spot you're stuck at. Go look at some resources, watch some videos, look at different authors' processes, and then come back and
Yes.
try whatever to get
Mm-hmm.
it to work for you and see what works for you. Because I think a lot of the time we get so caught up and tunnel visioned in doing projects that we forget that we can stop,
Mm-hmm.
take a little break, go look at some helpful tips, and then come back and try again.
Good words.
So, yeah, if no one in the chat has any questions, I just want to say thank you so much,
Thank you for
Andrew,
having me.
for joining me. And for everyone watching now and later on in the replay, all of the links to follow Andrew are down in the description below. Make sure you are following Andrew to get notifications on when that Kickstarter is coming out, when all of these upcoming releases are coming. Trust me, you want to be reading Andrew's books. He's an auto-buy author
Thank you.
for me, if you could not tell. And I have ebooks of the other ones. But yes, please, please go check out Andrew's books and enjoy the stories. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in the chat. And as always, take care of yourselves.
Have a great night.